Randomly out of nowhere, Falcom just dropped a demo for the upcoming Trails in the Sky First Chapter remake. The demo itself is the literal opening prologue, which is about 10 hours worth of content if you do all the side quests. It's very generous, like a lot of JRPG demos out there, taking a good bit of time to get through. And in true JRPG demo style, your save data can also be transferred into the full game when it releases in September, so getting it now can be a good way to be ready for when the game actually comes out. Anyway, after finishing it myself, I wanted to share my thoughts on this beautiful looking remake as a die-hard fan of the series. So let's take a look at First Chapter's remake to see if it's worth your time. First off, let's talk about the Trail series itself for a moment. The big appeal of these games is just how much world building goes into these titles. There's a lot to get invested into. It's not like your typical more standard JRPG experience where NPCs are treated like glorified tutorials and just spout the exact same dialogue every time you talk to them. The characters that make up the Trails games all have individual names, and what they say constantly changes for each major and minor event of the game as you progress. Becoming a Bracer also complements this aspect of the series in First Chapter, since you spend a lot of time interacting with NPCs and helping them out with odd errands here and there. You've really got to take your time and soak up the world building that the game keeps throwing at you. If you're looking for that in-depth, story-rich experience, then this series, or more specifically this remake, is definitely for you. Especially with it being the first installment in this long-running series, this demo really is the best starting point to get introduced to what makes these games so special. But of course, this is just the side stuff. The actual game story is also amazing. Without saying too much, a lot of soul is put into the writing of all these characters. Even technically replaying the game with the remake, I was reminded at just how well First Chapter really nails its characters. There's just a certain amount of depth with characters like Joshua and Estelle that you don't really see in other JRPGs out there. The original game came out in 2004, so a lot of tropes that you see today aren't really present in Trails in the Sky First Chapter. For instance, you have an actual parental figure in this game. They don't just go off and die in the first opening act. There's also a lot of themes of self-discovery and identity that's pulled off really well here. I'm still a fan of the more modern games in this series, but I really appreciate how First Chapter has a more smaller, focused cast of characters. But yeah, my immediate first impression when playing this remake is just damn, look how far we've come from the original game. It's extremely faithful to the original whilst taking care to properly transition scenes and animations into the modern day. Certain moments between the characters' dialogue feels exactly how it was in its original counterpart. On top of that, however, some extra scenes have been added to further flesh out Liboral, alongside the inclusion of voice acting to make it easier to connect to these amazing characters. Speaking of, major respect has to go towards the English dub for this game. Certain characters like Estelle and Joshua sound exactly like how I would imagine they sounded in the original game.
Look, Joshua, look!
It's certainly pretty, but you really should cut it out. It's not gonna be pretty for us if you drop it.
Aw, you're no fun. Well, that should do it.
Voice acting in general can really go a long way in making you feel more immersed when playing a game. When playing this release as a fan of the original, it has that same appeal as something like the Final Fantasy VII Remake project. It's like you already know how these scenes are going to play out in your head before actually seeing them, but having voice acting and actual animation sort of plays around with your expectations in a nice way and has an element of surprise to them. What I'm trying to say here is that if you've already played the original like me, then there's still so much to appreciate from this remake, even if you know how the story plays out. It's not as blatant as the Final Fantasy VII Remake project, but you can see on the second time around how certain moments are foreshadowed later on in the story, and maybe there's certain plot points that you didn't pick up on your first playthrough. On top of all the extra bells and whistles that the remake introduces, there's still plenty of reasons to play this title if you've already played the original. But let's talk about what's new to this remake. First off, these graphics are phenomenal. The character models in particular are the best I've seen out of any anime looking art style out there. Getting to see the city of Roland in this beautiful HD art style is also a treat to the eyes. They seriously nailed the original game's art style, but I mean there is something to say about how this cow looks. It kind of reminded me of that one GIF, I think everyone's seen it before. Also man, some of the smaller details in this remake have to be appreciated, such as how when cooking, the characters have these cute little animations that play out. There's also these neat loading icons being the sprites from the original game. I love this detail so much, by the way. On the technical side of things, I didn't notice any frame rate drops when playing this game on the PlayStation 5. The textures are also super high quality and look amazing. And on top of that, I even noticed in the settings that this game has support for 120 frames per second. I'm not really known for talking about games on the technical side of things, but this all just looks incredible. It really looks like art in motion. Although one thing on the technical side of things that I did notice is that loading zones are still here from Trails Through Daybreak. They are barely noticeable on the PlayStation 5, with loading being like less than a second long. And I know that it's only a matter of time until this series has a seamless world when going through the interior and exterior areas. But I just thought it was worth bringing up since I'm really hoping that the series no longer has them in the future. Now, let's talk about the combat in First Chapter's remake. You still have the same magic system as well as S-Craft, however many aspects from Trails Through Daybreak's combat system have been implemented into First Chapter's remake. While some of these changes might upset some fans, in all honesty it makes sense and I think the game is better off for it. One of my favourite aspects to the combat system in Daybreak, which is also in First Chapter, is how you can choose between an action RPG and a traditional turn-based RPG. It sounds bizarre at first seeing these two different genres come together in the combat system, but they actually complement each other really well. Basic combat revolves around you hitting the enemies and dodging their attacks, but once you've stunned them enough you can initiate the turn-based combat system and have a huge advantage over the enemy. And I've gotta say, the combat here is even better than Daybreak. It's super flashy and customizable. I mean, just look at these attack animations, they rival even the highest budget blockbuster titles out there. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the best looking game of 2025 in my opinion. However, there is something I wanted to bring up about the combat in the remake. Now in the original, you pretty much shredded for enemies and one-shotted them. The original, in my opinion, wasn't exactly the most well balanced game. With enough S-Craft charge, you could stack them and defeat enemies and major bosses very quickly, not to mention the ability to speed through combat with their shorter animations. So anyway, this is the point I'm trying to make here. I'm starting to understand playing the game myself that headline about how the main programmer took almost double the amount of length for the original to finish the remake. It's become a bit of a controversial subject, but it does make sense because cutscenes are more animated and have voice acting. It would of course increase the length of the remake compared to the original. This also goes for the combat encounters and how the remake overhauled the combat system as a whole. It's not an issue or anything for me personally, it's just something I noticed, especially since that headline wasn't exactly met with the most positive comments from fans. This game, unlike something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, is a direct recreation of all the events found in the original, so the length of the title increasing must come from the more lengthy cutscenes and combat encounters. Which, once again, I kinda prefer them here. They're better than the original and have more charm and personality to them. Moving on from the combat system, there's been plenty of quality of life improvements introduced in First Chapter's remake. I found personally that the tutorials were more easy to understand in the remake. The menus in general are also much more easy to navigate this time around. For instance, when you're in a shop, you actually see the characters looking at what they're about to buy. Now, looking at things on a more critical level, I don't really have any major complaints for my time with the remake so far, but I do have one minor criticism. Now, I try to keep things more relaxed on this channel since I'm not really good at being very angry. However, where are the damn treasure chest messages? Come on Falcom, dude, they were a huge aspect to the original game and they're not in the remake. Maybe I missed them or something, but that can't be. I was literally spamming the X button in front of every treasure chest I could find. Sure, maybe you can argue they added nothing to the first game, but it felt like having a director's commentary play throughout your playthrough. And dude, some of these were so funny. They break the fourth wall, talk about how the power levels make no sense in this series, how they added so much charm and personality into these games. But you know what, maybe I get it, maybe they're too immersion breaking to add into the remake, but man, I'm just gonna miss them, alright? Like, I know they're stupid, that they're just these small minor messages, but they added so much. They added so much to the original. But you know what, that's it, that's my only complaint with First Chapter's remake, the rest of it is solid and golden. This is probably the only JRPG from 2025 that could potentially dethrone Clair for me personally as the best JRPG to come out of this year. I can't really see the game going downhill in any way, especially since the demo gives you pretty much 1/5 of the entire game to play through. So I'm pretty safe to say so far that this game, like the original, is definitely going to be a masterpiece. I just hope it really sells well, so we'll maybe see remakes of Second Chapter, Trails in the Sky the Third, and potentially the Crossbow duology. But yeah, I'd also be as bold to say that First Chapter's remake might be the best remake of all time. Like seriously, everything is a net positive outside of the chest messages being removed. Look, as a Trails fan, I'm already really happy since now with this demo I get to be as annoying as humanly possible and constantly tell other people to go and play it. Do you have a Switch? Do you have Steam? Do you have a PlayStation 5? Exactly, the demo is free on all major storefronts, so go and play it right now. Like, this video is over, thanks for watching by the way, but just leave and go and play Trails in the Sky remake right now, you won't regret it, I promise. But with all that being said, now I'm curious, if you played the Trails in the Sky First Chapter remake demo, feel free to let me know what you think about it in the comment section. Also, any feedback on this video would be appreciated. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you have a nice rest of your day.